Please subscribe to my channel and like my video. Thank you for your support. Shadow Roads, the mysterious journey of a truck driver. Freddy was an experienced truck driver. He had taken on the job of transporting electronic goods from Istanbul to Europe. Driving a high-capacity modern truck, this job was a matter of prestige for him. However, it was the third day of the journey, and Freddy was driving on a deserted highway in the middle of the night. The silence always relaxed him, but this night felt different. First, the radio started to get static. Then, he heard strange noises coming from the back of his truck. Unsure whether to stop or not, he decided to pull into a gas station for a break. When Freddy stopped at the gas station, he noticed there were no other vehicles around. He greeted the attendant inside, but the man's odd behavior caught his attention. The attendant kept looking around nervously, as if he was scared of something. Ignoring the unsettling atmosphere, Freddy grabbed a coffee and continued his journey. As he got back on the road, an old model car started following his truck. The car stayed behind for a long time, sometimes turning off its headlights and driving very close to the truck. Freddy grew anxious and increased his speed, but the car was still there. This continued for several hours until the car suddenly disappeared at the entrance of a tunnel. As Freddy approached the German border towards the end of his journey, the strange noises from the boxes in the back of the truck grew louder. Deciding to stop and check, he opened one of the boxes and found only regular electronic parts. However, inside another box, he discovered an old, dusty book. The book was filled with strange symbols and drawings. As he tried to make sense of it, everything went dark and he passed out. Freddy woke up to find himself in his truck, behind the wheel. However, everything was blurry and he felt a strange pressure. Turning his head, he saw a pair of glowing eyes behind him, slowly moving closer. Panicking, he started the truck and sped away. He couldn't tell if what he had seen was real or just a hallucination. At the next rest stop, Freddy met a fellow trucker and shared his experience. His colleague said he had encountered similar things years ago and that it was a curse. According to him, the curse was related to the cargo Freddy was carrying, and he needed to get rid of it as soon as possible. Freddy was terrified upon hearing this. Freddy continued driving, unsure of how to get rid of the cargo. He decided to leave the load at a secure warehouse in the nearest city. However, when he arrived, the staff refused to accept it. Desperate, he decided to leave the boxes inside the truck and abandon it. After leaving the cargo, Freddy stopped one last time to check his truck. When he entered the back of the truck, the door suddenly closed behind him, plunging him into darkness. He heard whispers and felt a cold breath. The glowing eyes appeared again, and everything ended abruptly. Freddy was never heard from again. His truck was found abandoned, but neither the cargo nor Freddy was inside. This incident remained one of the most terrifying stories told among truck drivers. Everyone knew that unseen dangers could lurk on the roads at night. Freddy's fate remained a mystery, forever a secret lost in the shadows. End of the road, a nightmare from Asia to Europe. Jin had been a truck driver for years. Since his youth, he had experienced countless adventures and dangers on the roads he drove. The profession he had dreamed of since childhood had brought him freedom and independence. He had to transport a load from Turkey to the heart of Europe. The cargo seemed quite ordinary: electronic parts, textiles, and various industrial goods. However, Jin was unaware of the horrific secret hidden behind the load. Before setting off, the warehouse manager gave Jin a special warning. This cargo is very important. We don't want any delays or mishaps. And whatever you do, don't even think about opening the load. Jin couldn't understand why this warning was so serious, but as always, he decided to take his job seriously. The concern on the warehouse manager's face left Jin a bit uneasy. However, he focused on doing his job the best he could and hit the road. When Jin reached the rest stop where he would spend the first night, he felt quite exhausted. As he parked his truck in the parking area, he noticed the strange and timid looks from the staff. The owner of the rest stop, an old man, froze when he saw Jin's truck. "What is this truck doing here?" he muttered to himself. Jin didn't want to ask the old man anything. He just planned to rest and hit the road early in the morning. Unable to sleep throughout the night, Jin began to hear strange noises coming from his truck. It was as if whispers were rising from the boxes. Jin thought he was hallucinating due to fatigue and stress and forced himself to sleep. While sleeping in his truck, Jin had a strange dream. In his dream, black shadows were trying to suffocate him, emerging from the cargo. The shadowy figures circled around Jin, speaking in strange languages. When he woke up in a cold sweat, he thought he really saw dark figures around his truck. When he rubbed his eyes and looked again, there was nothing there. "Maybe this journey is getting a bit too much for me," he thought. On the second day of his journey, when Jin stopped at a gas station, an old man approached him. "Can you take me to Europe as well?" he asked. Jin, a bit tired of traveling alone, accepted the offer. However, he would soon realize that this old man was not an ordinary passenger. The man began asking questions about the cargo as soon as he got into Jin's truck. The old man started asking Jin questions about the cargo as soon as he got into the truck. "Do you know what's inside this load?" Jin didn't understand why the man was so curious. "I don't know, I just transport it. Why are you so interested?" he asked. The old man took a deep breath and began to speak in a whisper. "This load is cursed. There's a dark power inside." Jin didn't want to take the man's words seriously. However, as the night went on and their conversation filled with frightening stories, the noises from the truck became more pronounced. Jin, unable to bear it, decided to open one of the cargoes. When he opened the lid, he was horrified by what he saw. From the box emerged a shadow in human form. This shadow began to circle around Jin and speak in a strange language. The old man shouted, "Don't touch it. It's a part of the dark spirits," but it was too late. The shadow infiltrated Jin, taking control of him. Jin's body was no longer his own. The dark spirit wanted to use his body for its own purpose. Jin no longer had control over his own body. The shadow directed him as it pleased. The old man tried to help Jin, but the dark spirit was too powerful. Jin realized he had to transport this cursed load to Europe. But this was only the beginning. When he delivered the cargo, he would have unlocked a greater catastrophe. When Jin reached Europe and approached the place where he would deliver the load, the dark power inside him had completely taken over. After delivering the load, a terrifying event occurred. When the boxes were opened, the dark figures inside took control of everyone at the delivery point. This was the beginning of the curse. Jin disappeared after this horrific event. Rumors spread that other truck drivers who carried the cursed load faced similar incidents. No one could fully know Jin's and the dark cargo's true story. However, this event was etched into memories as the most frightening story told on the roads from Asia to Europe. Highway hauntings, the trucker's nightmare. Jake Mitchell had been a truck driver for over 20 years. He knew every interstate, every rest stop, and every diner from coast to coast. His rig, a reliable Peterbilt 379, had become his second home. Life on the road was solitary, but Jake enjoyed the freedom it brought. He was used to the long, lonely stretches of highway and the dark, deserted roads in the middle of nowhere. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake set out on a long haul from New York to California. He had a load of electronics to deliver and a tight schedule to keep. The first leg of the journey was uneventful, with nothing but the hum of the engine and the occasional radio static to keep him company. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the Midwest, Jake pulled into a small, run-down truck stop. The place was nearly empty, save for a few other truckers and a solitary gas station attendant. As he refueled, an old man approached him. His weathered face and hollow eyes sent a chill down Jake's spine. "Be careful out there," the old man warned. Strange things happen on these roads at night. Jake dismissed the warning with a nod, thinking the old man was just another eccentric local. He grabbed a quick bite and got back on the road, eager to make up for lost time. As the night deepened, Jake noticed something strange. His radio began to pick up static, and the headlights of his truck flickered. He glanced at his rearview mirror and saw a shadowy figure standing by the roadside. He shook his head, convinced it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. But the feeling of being watched persisted. Every few miles, he would catch a glimpse of the shadowy figure, always standing still, always watching. His unease grew, and he found himself gripping the steering wheel tighter. Around midnight, Jake decided to take a detour through a small town called Stillwater. He had never heard of it before, but it seemed like a good place to rest for a few hours. As he drove through the town, he noticed that it was eerily quiet. The streets were empty, and the buildings looked abandoned. Jake parked his truck near an old diner and decided to take a nap. As he drifted off to sleep, he heard faint whispers and the sound of footsteps outside his cab. He bolted upright, heart pounding, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The next morning, Jake woke up to find a note tucked under his windshield wiper. It read, "Leave now, or you'll never leave at all." He looked around, but there was no sign of anyone. The eerie silence of the town weighed heavily on him, and he decided to leave immediately. As he drove away from Stillwater, he realized that the town wasn't on any map he had. His GPS showed him driving through an empty field. Panic set in as he tried to make sense of what he had experienced. Back on the highway, the shadowy figure reappeared, this time much closer. Jake's truck began to sputter, and the engine stalled. He frantically tried to restart it, but the figure was now standing right in front of him. The figure's face was shrouded in darkness, but Jake could feel its eyes boring into him. Suddenly, the engine roared back to life, and Jake sped away, the figure disappearing in his rearview mirror. He drove through the night, never stopping, never looking back. Exhausted and terrified, Jake finally reached his destination in California. He delivered his load and decided to take a break from trucking. But the events of that night haunted him. He began to research Stillwater and discovered that the town had been abandoned for decades after a series of mysterious disappearances. Determined to get answers, Jake returned to Stillwater. This time, he was prepared. Armed with a flashlight and a camera, he ventured into the heart of the ghost town. The whispers returned, louder and more menacing. He saw the shadowy figure again, but this time, he confronted it. "Who are you? What do you want?" Jake shouted. The figure stepped forward, revealing a gaunt, ghostly face. "Leave this place. It's not safe for the living." Jake felt a surge of anger and fear. Why? What happened here? The figure began to dissolve into the mist, but not before whispering, "Some things are better left forgotten." Jake left Stillwater, but the experience changed him. He could never go back to his old life on the road. The open highway that once brought him freedom now felt like a prison. He sold his truck and settled down in a small town, far away from the haunted roads of his past. But every night, as he lay in bed, he could still hear the whispers and see the shadowy figure standing at the edge of his vision. a constant reminder of the horrors that lurk in the darkness. Thank you for listening.